Oh, the places you'll go. Today on Questions Answered, we're answering questions about traveling with your bike. And you can do it. So the first question is, can I travel with a bike? And the answer is yes. And there are many ways to travel with a bike. Some obvious, some less obvious, but let's get into it. So first thing is you can ride your bike. You'd be surprised how far you can get just by riding your bike if you have the time. With the right amount of planning and setup, you can take your bike just about anywhere. But you can also take your bike on a train, on a bus, by driving there in your car and taking your bike with you, or flying in a commercial aircraft. And the most important thing is, of course, to plan ahead and be equipped for your journey. So let's just talk a little bit about what it takes to travel with your bike on some of these other forms of transportation. If you want to travel with your bike on a train, Amtrak, for instance, has onboard bike storage on select lines, but generally requires a reservation. And you want to do that ahead of time with time to spare because those tend to book up. They only allow bikes up to 50 pounds with 2-inch tires technically, but I think you can fudge that a little bit, but you might want to be careful with e-bikes. You can also check your bike as luggage, but you have to box it up ahead of time, either in a bike box or traveling case. And we'll talk a little bit more about traveling cases in a little bit. But for Amtrak, folding bikes don't need reservations and can be carried on as luggage in many passenger cars as well. So it's definitely easier to bring a folding bike on a train than a full-size bike. If a train doesn't go where you need to go, a bus might. And Greyhound allows boxed bikes for an oversized luggage fee, and you can even purchase bike boxes from them. You might want to bring your own bike box, though, because it's better to box your bike ahead of time with proper packing material and a proper process to make sure nothing gets damaged in transit. And speaking of boxing your bike, the next question is, how do you prep your bike for air travel? And number one is to box it. You can't bring a fully assembled bike on just about any plane, unless it's a private jet. Maybe you have access to one of those. But if you do, then this probably isn't a concern for you. But you can box your bike in a number of ways. The simplest one, if you don't have a bike box already, is to get a cardboard bike box from your local bike shop and get the packing material necessary to box your bike in a safe way where it won't get damaged in transit. And you can typically follow the assembly video for your bike, but in reverse to box it up properly. And that involves taking off the front wheel, taking off the handlebars and stem, and taking off the seat and pedals, and then wrapping everything in foam, zip tying it all together so nothing moves around, and boxing those small accessories. You can also put other things inside that bike box to make sure that your bike doesn't rattle around in different ways. And usually what happens to damage a bike is the components kind of bounce off one another in there and cause scrapes or knock the wheels out of alignment. So the more you can put in there to prevent those things from happening, the safer your bike's going to be in transit. It's also an opportunity for you to throw in some extra clothes or things that don't fit in your other luggage too. So that's an easy way to protect your bike. But there are also more advanced ways to pack your bike. There are a number of travel cases on the market that allow either easier disassembly of your bike or less disassembly with more protection, or a convenient way to carry it with you. So some brands to check out, I would look at Evoc, Dakeen, the Aura case, Thule, or the Airport Ninja. So Daryl, my coworker, did a great review of the Airport Ninja in another video. And that one is definitely on the end of the spectrum where it requires more disassembly of your bike and therefore more assembly on the other end. But it's also really easy to carry with you and can fold up and store pretty easily when you're done using it or not using it. But then kind of on the other end of the spectrum, you've got cases like Evoc or the higher end Thule cases where you don't have to do very much disassembly of your bike to get the bike in the case. Sometimes it's as little as just taking off the front wheel. And many of these cases have a system where your bike can kind of mount in place inside the case on kind of like a repair stand. So then on the other end, when you're reassembling your bike, it goes together super quickly. So for people who travel frequently, a higher end case definitely makes sense. For a once in a blue moon trip, just a basic cardboard box from your local bike shop and a good packing job is good enough. But then that leads to the next question. what do I do with the bag and the box when I get to my destination? There are some options there. You can rent a locker at the airport. You can arrange with a local bike shop ahead of time. And if you don't want to do your own assembly on the other end, this is probably the best bet for you anyway, because you just take a cab to the bike shop, they can assemble the bike for you, and usually they can store the box for you, until you're done. This, of course, depends on what kind of trip you're doing. If you're just kind of doing, a there and back trip, and you're going to end up in the same place that you started, or you're just doing local rides out of a new destination, then going back to the same shop where you started makes sense. But you can also have another kind of trip where you start in one place and end in a completely different place. And this is, of course, where planning comes in handy again. So coordinating with a shop on the other end of your trip might make sense for you as well. In which case, you don't actually have to worry about storing anything, right? You can also arrange with a hotel to store it, if you're running out of one location. There's various options for storing your travel case. On to the next question. What tools should I bring with me when I'm traveling with my bike? And if we're talking about a situation where you have to disassemble and reassemble your bike, usually basic tools are enough. Allen keys, pedal wrench, something to cut the zip ties, and maybe some spare zip ties if you have to pack it up again. That's kind of like the baseline. If your bike requires some proprietary tools, like if you have a pinion bike and you're doing some remote riding, having a pinion lockering tool makes sense. Or if you have an e-bike that requires some special kind of tool, something to keep in mind if you're doing some remote riding. But the other thing is, you probably don't need to bring that many tools if you've planned ahead properly and you know that you're following a route that has some local bike shops along the way. And if you require a major service, you're not going to have tools for a major service with you on most rides. So having a route that takes you by shops that can take care of you in a disastrous situation is a really good idea. And finally, what do I need to know to bring my bike with me when I'm traveling by car? I think there's some key questions to answer first, which is, how many bikes do you want to bring with you? Do you need to store other things inside your car? In which case, do you need a rack to transport the bike? And what kind of bike are you bringing with you, and what kind of riding are you going to be doing on the bike? Because that'll determine some of the requirements of how you have to bring the bike with you. So I think, for some car types and some types of riding, like let's say you have a hatchback and you're bringing your road bike with you, pretty easy to just take the front wheel off, flip down the back seats, and throw the bike in the back of the car. You want to consider some other things, though, if you're, let's say, riding a heavy mountain bike, an e-bike, or your bike's getting really dirty, or you want to transport other things or people with you. In which case, the bike probably needs to go on the outside of the car. So you need a bike rack. And there's a lot of bike rack options. If you're looking for something real cheap, a strap rack that mounts on the back of the car is a simple way to do it, but there's usually weight restrictions on those. So if you have a heavier bike, a mountain bike, or an e-bike, then they're probably not the best choice. And they also don't work with every car. My preference is generally a hitch rack. If your car doesn't have a hitch receiver, it's usually possible to get one installed. U-Haul does the service for pretty cheap as well. And the advantage of hitch racks is you still have access to your trunk and the rest of your car, and they have a much higher weight limit for heavier bikes. And for e-bikes specifically, where they are generally too heavy to lift onto the top of your car, you can get hitch racks that are designed with ramps to roll your e-bike on and off. So there's some pretty clever designs out there to allow you to carry heavier stuff. Just be sure that as you're putting your bike on your rack, make sure everything's secured properly. If you have to remove a wheel, be sure you have a place to put the wheel and that you don't forget it at the side of the trail, like I did that one time. If you have a bike with disc brakes, having a pad spacer is really useful, just to keep the brakes from closing while you're transporting it. You can also just use a piece of cardboard or another piece of clean plastic in there, because if you squeeze that brake lever, then you're going to have to pry those pistons back apart again on the other end. So it's easier to keep that from happening with a spacer. If you have any more questions about transporting or traveling with your bike, or any questions about bike-related stuff in general, put them in the comments and we'll answer them in a future video. Thanks for watching.